We must be able to call it something different than an email newsletter. Let's work on that right now. Hello, thank you for joining me. I'm Michael Bosey, and this is Marketing Without the Marketing. And let's get right into it. A big part of marketing is email. Just finished a series on Email Marketing 201. And this has been bugging me for a while, and I haven't come up with a good solution. So I thought in this episode, I'd just ask for your help. To me, I just think we can do better than calling it an email newsletter. To me, newsletter sounds like early 90s desktop publishing. It just sounds old, outdated, and I just think we can do better. Now, before you jump in with your ideas and suggestions, let's look at the other names for this type of email marketing. There are really two strategies that you have, right? One is a sort of newsletter strategy sent manually, where you write an email and you send it out to your list or a segment of your list. And of course, this is a great starting point for any email marketing. Or the second thing is to do a feed where it's sent automatically. And this is the way that I have mine set up. So in other words, when I publish a podcast episode or a blog, it automatically sends out a notification to those who want to receive it, who have self-selected into getting that particular content and at what frequency on my list. But for the newsletter portion, there are a number of different names that we call these things. First is newsletter, or worse, e-newsletter. They're also called updates, campaigns, announcements, broadcasts, promotions. I've heard e-zine, which is horrible. Dispatch. Paul Jarvis uses this, and I kind of like that one. That's not too bad. But none of these have really sort of, I don't know, they don't display to me what I think of in terms of a 21st century modern marketing program using email, which is still the most important part of your marketing funnel, and we're still calling it a newsletter. And if we look at all of the email service providers or ESPs, they kind of do the same thing, right? They're still using this kind of what I'll call sort of outdated language just because I'm searching for something different to call it. For instance, MailChimp, my preferred ESP, they call them campaigns. Constant Contact, another very popular one. They call it, you go to campaigns and then start an email. So they just call it an email, which is, that's what it is. And it's fairly simple and straightforward. Emma does the same thing. They call it under campaigns. You start a mailing. So they use the term mailing. And Aweber, same thing. They call it a campaign. Now, campaign is fine. In effect, that's what it is. But also, when I'm sending sort of one email from my list, or when I'm doing it on behalf of a client, I don't think of that as a campaign. I mean, it is, right? But I tend to think of campaign as something that is more involved and is going to be done time and time again with a coordinated set of activities, set of emails, something that's leading someone towards something. And let's be fair, we are doing that when we're sending out newsletters. But it feels like it's not quite the right fit. Now, if we look at some of the others, for instance, GetResponse, they call it a newsletter, or sometimes they refer to it as a blast in their blogs and whatnot. I hate the word blast, an email blast. I mean, that says it all, right? You're just going to blast it out to a ton of people and not really care who they are or whatever. That to me feels more like it's an announcement. And my sense of that is, trying to do this in a soft touch, respectful way is, have you earned the right to be sending announcements? Announcements seem to be sort of very self-motivated and not really caring about the audience. Now, look, it could be done in another way or done in a more soft touch way, but announcement feels very one-to-many. I'm standing at a podium and I'm speaking to you, rather than the sort of more intimate one-to-one that I try to achieve with this podcast and when doing any emails as well. Is, look, we're on the same footing. We are small business owners, freelancers, entrepreneurs, underdogs who are trying to connect one-to-one. Sort of taking that privileged position, I don't really like that. And that's the same way I feel about updates, right? Do you want an update from me? Do you want an update on what I'm doing? I mean, probably not, right? The whole idea here is that we should be showing up with something of value for you, the audience, right? This is the way that we should always handle our email marketing, not just here's an update on the things that I'm doing. I mean, and again, it's not to say that that can't work or that might not be of interest to someone, but I mean, it just feels selfish to me, and I don't like to do my marketing that way. I would rather say, listen, let me bring you some value, not just give you updates on what I'm doing. I have a page for that where I feel like if someone is interested, because I guess it could happen, I have a page that is michaelbosey.com/now. I love this sort of concept of a now page, which is, hey, these are the things that are at the top of mind, things that I'm interested in right now, if you're interested. But I try not to force that on you by sending you an email. If you're interested, yeah, come by. Awesome. Great. Let's talk about the things that I'm interested in. I'd love to do that. But to put that in your email inbox feels aggressive and kind of needless. And if you look at Mad Mimi, they use update or traditional newsletter. Actually, you go to Compose, which I kind of like. Compose is pretty good. And then you have to pick a template, which is either promotion, invitation, update, and they literally call it traditional newsletter. So that that sort of gives you a sense of the way that they think about it. And the last two that I'll look at is ConvertKit and Infusionsoft, now called Keep, Keap. They use probably my least favorite terminology besides newsletter, which is broadcast. So when you set something up in Infusionsoft, for instance, it's start a broadcast. A broadcast to me is such the wrong message. I mean, again, that's saying that you're making an announcement, you're standing up at the podium with a loudspeaker. It's not going to be a one-to-one conversation. It's going to be me shouting at you something that I think that you should hear. When we look at new media and the abilities for one-to-one connection, that to me is so antithetical to the way that we should be doing our marketing, that if we think of it as a broadcast or an announcement or a promotion, that's the wrong flavor. And practically speaking, it's just harder to earn trust that way. You can stand up there and broadcast all you want to a general audience. That's great. You might be able to show off your expertise, but you're not inviting anyone into your world. You're just saying, hey, I'm important. You should listen to me. Here's my broadcast. And I just don't favor that as a way to do 21st century marketing. And certainly, if you're a longtime listener of this podcast, you know that that's the way that I feel about it. So, and what's more is you probably agree with that, or at least to some extent. And we want to be doing our marketing differently with respect for our customers, for our audience, never trying to force them into something, but inviting them instead. All right, I'll stop there because really the whole point of this episode was to ask you if you have any better ideas. I'd love to come up with something other than newsletter for that first strategy. And I've been thinking about this for a while, and it's a little embarrassing. I've not come up with anything that I think is better than that. And it's embarrassing because there really should be something better than that. So I put it to you, is there something we can call it other than a newsletter? And again, I'm talking about something that you're sending manually, not a feed or not something that is automatic or, part of a nurture sequence or a drip sequence or a funnel. all of which have their problems as far as terminology goes. But I'm thinking of the thing that you send one-off to your audience or a segment of your audience. Can we call it something other than a newsletter? So let me hear from you if you would be so kind. There's a few different ways to get in touch. First, the comment section in the show notes for this episode. Left a link for you if you're listening to this on a podcast app, which I assume you are. Or via Twitter. My handle is mbozzi. That's MBOEZI. Again, left a link for you. Or a new thing that I'm trying is Patreon. I'm at patreon.com/mbozzi. Again, left a link for you in there. If you don't know about Patreon, Patreon is a way for people to support various producers, artists, creatives, whatever. And I have my podcast on there along with some exclusive content that goes beyond the podcast. And I'm trying this out right now. And I do intend to do an episode in the future on strategies that have worked or have not worked, but I really favor the approach much more so than a Kickstarter or GoFundMe, because those, as far as crowdfunding goes, Kickstarter is more project-based, I guess I would say, whereas Patreon is more career-based. And it's a chance for people to get to support you. But here's the thing, it's also a feed. So, I have my podcast there as well and the ability for people to get in touch. And if you get something out of this podcast, you can show your appreciation and support there on my Patreon page. And so far, it's been a fun experiment. I've got some patrons already. And I've turned around and supported other folks, particularly other podcasters. So it's been kind of a fun experiment. Like I said, I'll report on results as, when I feel like I really know the platform. But I invite you to go and check it out. Again, at patreon.com/mbozzi, and left a link in the show notes there for you too. All right. Thank you in advance for your comments and suggestions. I'm looking forward to hearing them because I'm kind of stumped and I bet you can come up with something better. All right, we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you again for listening. I really appreciate you.